There's a few things we want to, I want to either correct or clarify from our special because, as I say, we've not got, I mean, I've got the most minor of legal backgrounds. You've got none. So essentially, I've got none either. And I think we muddled our way through the episode quite well, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few things actually I want to say.
Now, wait a minute. Who thought in 2024 we would be talking on a wrestling podcast about a 78-year-old man's sexual proclivities? I never thought that would be one of the subjects, but it is, and apparently it's mainstream because everybody carried the story. Everybody, the New York Post and the New York Times and the LA Times or NBC, CBS, they all carried the story. And was it because Vince is so well known? I'm sure everybody knows Vince McMahon. Everybody. Even if you don't watch wrestling, you still know who he is. So everybody carried this story. So it was mainstream news. And I think it shocked a lot of people. And if anybody read that a suit, how many pages? 67?
Mm-hmm.
67 pages. You come away from that and saying, wow, what the hell have we been? You know, the things that, you know, the segments that Vince used to do when they called him a this and a that and all of a piece of crap and trash, and hell, that was Vince's idea, because he actually kind of had a insight to what he was really like. And you're not just playing a role, you're actually describing Vince. I saw Hulk Hogan on an interview and he's got a mask on and he's saying, you're a low down this, that, and the other. And I don't know if he called him a pervert, but he was taking a lie detector test. You remember that?
Well, I remember the Simpsons episode that they ripped that joke off of as well. Yeah. It is a carbon copy of a Simpsons joke, that.
Well, they asked him, did he do this? No. And everything he said, and it was actually entertaining.
Yeah, I'm not a pervert.
And it's kind of funny when you watch it, but now you look back at it and you go, And that's always been, I think, the beauty of wrestling, because what is real and what's not real. So if you can keep them, I've always said, here's you're 100% of wrestling fans here, and all these people think it's all scripted, and you know, and all these other people they think it's all set up, but you got that middle part that goes, and not every match, but some matches, these guys don't like each other, and you can really get into those matches because now, when you think the animosity is real, easier to get into it. So if you can keep about 10% of them, like in that middle, you got them. So I think that's and looking back on what Vince has done, it's him. Now, I don't know him as well as a lot of other people, but I said on our last, on our special, that every time I was around Vince or John Laurinaitis, and there's a few more up there too, I felt just a bad vibe coming off them, and I didn't like it. I was very uncomfortable being around them. So as soon as I could get away from them, the better I was. And that was the atmosphere that I remember WWE for. I was never really comfortable there.
I want to, very quickly, I'm just going to say a few things and then I'm going to ask you the first big question that I want you to tell me how it's even going to work, quite frankly. But just a couple of responses from our last episode. We got a couple of things wrong. One, Argentina Apollo does exist. He's a popular wrestler from the 60s, especially around the WWF Capital Sports area, apparently. Two, you can have as much money as you want in your house, and as long as you can explain where it came from legally, you get to keep it. You said it was a $10,000 thing. That's only when you're going across borders or flying or anything like that. Anything above 10,000.
That is true. Well, but you got to prove how you got the money.
Yeah, but I mean...
And a lot of times they could pick that money up till you come in and prove where you got it. unless you can prove it right there. And I don't know if if they can decide right there, yeah, you got it through lawful means, or I don't know.
Yeah, like invoicing.
I just heard this stuff. Hey, I'm not an expert on this, so.
Number 3, and this is something I was confused with. NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, have only not been allowed to cover up a potential crime since December 2022 in the US. This is a Biden enacted law, and apparently it's also not retroactive. So you can't, like, previous to like December 2022, you can't then go back to NDAs that cover up some illegal activity and then expose them, apparently. But in the UK, that's been the case since 2019, so I got confused on that one. So there's just a few sort of...
Wait a minute, I don't even know what you're saying.
Okay, right. So
an NDA, right. Non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah. If you signed one before December 2022, you could use an NDA, apparently, to cover up illegal activities, whether it be fraud or whether it be sexual misconduct or whatever it is. After December 2022 in the US, you can't. But the law is not retroactive. So you can't then pick up an NDA from 1980 and say, well, this was to cover up this, that, and the other. So you can't sort of like apply it to past NDAs. Someone, or I think a few people have brought this up, and I'm interested to see what you're going to say about this. Do you think that Vince McMahon is going to be erased from WWE television like Chris Benoit was for the most part?
They can't. Really. For years and years and years, he was all over it. So I don't know how they could erase him. I mean, they could, but they'd have to get somebody to say a voiceover. They'd have to get that erased, and it'd be a lot of trouble. But I don't know. This is the biggest story I think wrestling has had ever. Except maybe, I don't think the Chris Benoit story was this big. I mean, it was sad and tragic. But this here is just, woo! I'm Ric Flair. Woo! It's out there.
Do you know, I'll say this.
Wait a minute. You know something? Bringing up Ric Flair, my old buddy Ric Flair, I think he knew something about this too. Maybe. Birds of a feather, what do they say?
Flock together.
That's what they say. I don't know if that's true or not. But let's make a prediction now. You may want to talk about it later, but I think John Laurinaitis is just a start. I think there's some. Of course, we can all sit back and guess who would have been involved in this. So, but I think everybody, it was common knowledge in WWE. Don't you think?
So they say. I mean, I don't know where I have it.
Titan Towers is it's how many employees do you think work at Titan Towers?
I don't know. Do you know, I was going to say something stupid like 1,000, but it's definitely in the hundreds.
No, yeah, hundreds. I'd say 200, 300. It's a small community. It's what it is. So if you have, and when the boss does something, that's going to get around pretty fast. I mean, you got to watch what you say anything to, because wrestling is noted for people stooging each other off, telling on each other. So you'd have to, if you said something about Vince, you better be sure that who you're telling it to is not going to tell it to the next person who has a big mouth. Mm-hmm. But I think, by and large, whatever happened in Titan Towers, is not necessarily kept at Titan Towers inside. I think it spreads out.